Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships and healing from narcissistic relationships. I'm going to open this with a question and ask you, have any of you ever gone no contact with a narcissistic parent or narcissistic family system? And then I want you to reflect on whether or not people got angry at you for doing that. My guess is yes and yes, but let's break this one down. Because this is what happens, right? You go no contact because you just couldn't do it anymore. And not only does a narcissistic parent get angry, so too does everyone else. So remember, no contact is a big topic in this conversation. And it's probably the strongest, heaviest tool in the drawer of the narcissism communication desk. It shuts communication down. You are no longer caught in the confusing word salad morass with them. But it's also not simple, and you may feel a sense of loss and grief, guilt, and even more confusion about whether you did the right thing by going no contact. And when it comes to family, it's the most difficult decision of all. It can take years and even multi decades for people to get to the no contact place with a family. Almost always, when I encounter a person who has gone no contact with a family, I know that this person has gone through years of hell, years of figuring out different ways of being in their family, of saying it, of silencing themselves, of not sharing feelings, of feeling hurt. And that, when it is family, that these cycles had started in childhood. It was a slow path of indoctrination, of having to live in subjugation to the parents' needs, of being shamed for wanting to be your own person, and learning that attachment, the lesson you got about attachment, was that attachment means having to give up on yourself to be loved. Now, most people don't get to the point of no contact with their families, but many do. And if you have gone no contact with a family member or a family, odds are that the reason you did that was because you hit a wall. That you'd been hurt so many ways, maybe you got into therapy, and finally in the face of a validating voice, you finally learned that your family system won't change, and you said no more. Maybe you were trying to protect children and vowed that your own children would not experience what you had to experience. Whatever your reasons were, they were yours, and you did it. There's no going no contact, especially in a family, without lots of pushback. Now, the initial reaction, it'd be interesting for you to use the comments to drop the kinds of reactions you got if you did go no contact, but the initial reaction is a severe anger. How dare you? How dare you not show up when I demanded you to? How dare you don't listen to me? How dare you not be available to me? How dare you think you can be your own person separate from me? How dare you deviate from this family's narrative? How dare you don't remain in my service? How dare you think you can be out of my control? Now, they don't say this out loud, of course, but you feel it. And so you face the anger. It's happening. You may not face it directly, but it's there. And you just made one of the most difficult decisions you'll ever have to make, and now have to endure being painted as selfish, cold, unforgiving, angry, ungrateful. And even if your goal was to go no contact with just one family member, the ripple effect is always going to affect the entire family system. And so, while you were attempting to go no contact with one or maybe two family members, even other people who were harmed by these narcissistic family members will be angry at you. Status quo is very powerful, and the manipulations and trauma bonds are powerful. Your attempt to go no contact with one person who didn't just harm you, but had invalidated so many, means that the rage you had become accustomed to had an even greater depth. Now, although you may not be facing their invalidation because you aren't in contact with them, you are in that uncomfortable position of tolerating their distorted view of you and the distorted view of you that they are sharing with other people. Your going no contact from your family can feel like rebellion, like defiance, and not what it really is at the core of it. Most people go no contact in an attempt to make themselves feel safe, to cut off the voices that threaten your sense of self. But your parent will be treating it as simple defiance. And it can give you pause and make you wonder, am I just being defiant and rebellious? And then again, play on that self-doubt and self-shame because you don't see it as safety. Now, this can feel really galling because while you are not surprised, you will recall how the narcissistic parent would basically go, no contact, whenever it worked for them. The silent treatment is a universal tactic that is used by narcissistic parents. It might be how they communicated disapproval, disappointment, you not being what they want you to be. The way that narcissistic parents deployed silent treatments when you were a child was part of the endless abandonments that constitute a childhood in a narcissistic family system. And into adulthood, if you are not what the narcissistic parent or family system wants you to be, if you disappoint with them, if you don't say what they want, if you don't be what they want, they will go no contact with you, or extended silent treatment, I guess, but it's for very different reasons. By and large, when survivors of narcissistic abuse engage in no contact, it's very self-protective. It is defeat. It is helplessness. It's a last resort. There's a lot of grief. When a narcissistic person goes no contact, it is often ego, it is punitive, and it's a way to maintain control and power, show everyone who's boss. And when this is done by a parent, it's also unacceptable. Their role is inherently different than that of a child and was far more developmentally impactful. So then that entitled hypocrisy pops up. They have been doing these fits and spurts of no contact for years and silent treatment when it worked for them, so they could punish you as part of their adult tantrum. And this hypocrisy feels really unjust. That they're allowed to go silent, that they could disappear and not respond, and yet when you finally decide to end contact, you're faced with rage and a character assassination. Now, it also gets complicated as time goes on. You may go no contact with a parent or a family member or family system, and then life happens. People get sick, people die. For some reason, you may get pulled in, and some survivors feel shame, like they failed because you might think that you broke no contact, that you failed at that. It's not true. You didn't fail. But rather, that period of no contact was essential and invaluable to you developing more autonomy, divesting from a system that denied your authenticity, your healing. You've been building up other supports. So if and when you do get pulled back into a family system for some reason, you are now stronger. The healing cannot be stolen back from you, and you can see it clearly. So it can be infuriating, shocking, and feel unjust when after you finally say, enough, I can't do this, I cannot be gaslighted by this system any longer, it's not okay, and I see it, and it's not going to change, and so then you decide to step away, and then you're met with anger that you went no contact, but there were never any attempts by people within that family system to change. It doesn't feel good. The whole flying monkey mess that follows up, that doesn't feel good either. But when you go no contact with your parent, it is your parent. So to do this, to go no contact, brings up primal feelings of abandonment, shame, fear, and grief. The reckoning that nothing you could have done would have made it better since childhood. And that's a heavy weight to carry. To recognize that for you to finally be you, to live honestly as yourself, to show up as you, that the only way that that was going to be able to happen in some cases was that you had to break out of this system, and that recognition hurts. Family estrangement is viewed very negatively, and certainly nobody signs up for it. Everybody just wishes for and craves a loving, attuned, and consistent family. Many of us don't get it. But because the estranger is always the one viewed as the problem, it makes this hard. When people judge estrangement, they do not focus on the abusive behavior that would have led up to someone making a choice to step away from a system, but rather on judging the person who stepped away from the narcissistic system. It can bring up massive feelings of helplessness because you then recognize the perpetual catch-22 you would have been caught in. Either put up with the harms of the relationship by your narcissistic parent, try and try and try, and then give up on yourself and slide into feelings of depression or despair. That's path one. Or make a choice for yourself that was deeply painful and to step away from the system and save yourself and then face the judgment of the world. All of these reasons highlight the injustice that makes healing from narcissistic abuse so difficult, and that healing often means getting okay with people not being okay with us. Right to the end, we want our parents sign off. Even if they're narcissistic parents sign off, we want them to sign off on what we do. But nobody does no contact because a relationship is healthy. And the fact is, nobody's going to be okay with you doing it. That's why you're doing it. But when they get really angry at you, after they are the ones who hurt you, remember that grief will always be at your side and that you didn't get here casually. Remember that. The child in you who was shut down when you tried to be you will appreciate it. No contact is never easy, least of all with a family. And again, it is that whole idea of estrangement that we are much more likely to pathologize the estranger and not the people who are behaving badly in a relationship. It's injustice wrapped in hypocrisy, tied with a gaslighting bow. It's very painful, but many, many people are not ready for the level of intense rage that they face when they step away from a narcissistic relationship and are struck by the absolute hypocrisy of a parent that had no problem with silent treatments and pulling away and even abandonment, being enraged when their child, adult child, doesn't respond to them exactly when they want, how they want. So it's a tough one, but understand that this is sort of what comes with this territory. Thanks again.